so much stuff.
All of these Carpenter movies, like even Assault on Precinct 13 had a lot of stuff, and I thought that one was going to be really difficult. But I mean, it's honestly harder when there's a lot of stuff. I think it because it's just so much to wade through and so much, especially when like we talked about on Halloween and even on The Fog a little bit, like where there are like conflicting information depending on which interview you're listening to, whether it's Deborah Hill or John Carpenter, and then trying to like wade through it and figure out which one is actually like closest to being correct.
Problem is, Justin, we put too much pressure on ourselves to try to do the best job and to give the people everything that they'd ever want to know about the movie.
Yeah. We do it ourselves. We're the ones who called ourselves the last podcast you ever need about this. So,
as Escape from New York was opening up this time when I watched it, I mean, I'm probably like 5 minutes in, and I turn to my wife and say, John Carpenter really is my favorite director.
Yeah.
He's comfort food for me.
Yeah.
Like, I just immediately, like, as soon as Escape from New York starts, I'm just like, happy.
It's good. Yeah.
I just like this vibe.
Like that music hits and
yeah.
Dun 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 dun. It's so good. It's like
pretty sure you just did Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, so. I did because we were talking about it. Yes, you're right.
But yeah. Anyway, I just love everything about.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the team involved in all of the making of these movies, like this run of movies for John Carpenter is just fucking phenomenal.
It's insane how consistent it is. Like, I remember when Rob Reiner died a few months ago, and people were talking about that like first run of his from like starting with Spinal Tap up through, I don't know, with Harry McSally or whatever. And it was just like unprecedented. But John Carpenter's run here in the middle of this is pretty damn close to that, I think.
Yeah, I get that it's not going to be for everybody, but it is certainly for me. It is exactly what I love about movies, and this movie is no different. So I guess I'll shut the fuck up and we'll get started. Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock, the show that digs deep into the stories behind your favorite cult and genre movies. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horne.
And I'm your other host, Justin Bishop. So, last week on the show, we waded through the eerie coastal chills of The Fog, John Carpenter's atmospheric, old-fashioned ghost story, a movie that, against all odds, was a commercial success. So it was yet another feather in Carpenter's cap. Now, as we discussed, that film was actually the first half of a two-picture deal that Carpenter signed with Avco Embassy Pictures. Today, we are discussing the second one. So what do you do when you're a red-hot director who's had two smash hits back-to-back, and you owe one more movie to the studio? Now, to answer that, we have to backtrack a few years, back to 1974, before Halloween. Back in 1974, Carpenter, he had just completed Dark Star, the country is in free fall, Nixon is packing his bags, and the Vietnam War has left a huge bloody scar on the American psyche. The collective mood in the U.S., it wasn't just low, it wasn't just down, it was deeply, aggressively cynical. And that cynicism, I think, was reflected in many of the films of that era. And in the middle of all of this, John Carpenter sits down to write a script. A noir western set in a trashed, futuristic New York City that's been converted into a penal colony. Around this same time, audiences were also lining up around the block to watch Charles Bronson blow away criminals in Death Wish. And that film became a controversial flashpoint because it tapped into this raw baseline terror of the city as an untamable urban jungle. So while Carpenter disagreed with Death Wish's right-wing reactionary politics, he was fascinated by its grimy, high-stakes aesthetic, the way that it portrayed New York City as a beast that would eat you alive. And he wanted to take that film's metropolitan fear, smash it together with his deep love for the unbridled freedom from old-school Hollywood westerns, and use it to create a nightmare vision of a controlled fascist future that he genuinely feared that the world was racing towards.
Death Wish was a big one for him, and he said it wasn't a great film, but it was a fun movie. He also says he was reading a lot of science fiction at the time, and he read a Harry Harrison story. There was this planet in the story, the toughest, most evil place in the universe. So the only person you could send to go do anything there would be the most evil guy in the universe. And he just loved that concept. He actually said early on, he said in his mind, it was going to be like, I'm sending Clint Eastwood. He's going to be a badass, and he's going to, like, what if he gets sent to save the president? That's literally what was in his brain when he was doing it. And he said that reading more about Carpenter, I guess where I'm going is that he says almost everything he writes, he's realized is just some kind of Odyssey Western. In some way, shape, or form. That's what he's giving you every time.
Right. Well, Carpenter shopped his script around, but everyone who looked at it passed on it. Not only was Carpenter an unknown with only a single micro-budget sci-fi film under his belt at the time, but this new script of his was just too violent, too scary, and too weird. Like, nobody wanted to take a chance on it.
According to Carpenter, it was really thanks to what happened with Nixon. He says basically studios would keep telling him that things are already cynical about the president. And I think his quote was like, they would tell him like, well, we've beaten up on the president enough for now, so we can't kind of have this dark view of all of that.
I mean, he kind of deserved it.
Well, he earned it. Yeah. It was not even like he was like having to look that much into sci-fi like to do this. Like, he just looked at New York in the 70s and like bankruptcy, garbage strikes, Son of Sam, and he thought, you know what? They'll probably just wall this shit off one day. And so probably, I mean, I could just see it being a natural progression of thought for him probably at that time. But yeah, for some reason, Hollywood executives thought putting the president in a dystopian prison right up after Watergate was too cynical for the Americans. And, because nobody's trying to think about walls and corrupt politicians and jailing the president. Who would think about that?
No, never. That's insane.
No, yeah. You got to wait at least until the 80s. And from then on, it's throw that motherfucker in Thunderdome. Let's see what happens.
So nobody wants to do the script. So the script goes into storage. Cut to a few years later, Carpenter's made history with Halloween, followed that up with a box office win with The Fog, and he still owed Avco Embassy another movie to fulfill his 2-picture contract. Now, originally his plan was, we've talked about this, I think, a couple times in the past episodes in this series, but his original plan was to adapt a book called The Philadelphia Experiment. It's a book about a well-known conspiracy theory involving the U.S. Navy, teleportation, and Einstein's unified field theory, which we're not going to get into because we got into that enough during our David Lynch series.
I was going to say, I bet people were waiting, or like, oh, fuck, here comes the tangent. We'll wait until casting for that. Just wait.
But while he was working on the screenplay for The Philadelphia Experiment, Carpenter hit a wall. The story really just didn't have a discernible third act, and he didn't really know how to wrap it up, so the whole thing just fell apart. So Carpenter had to walk into the office of Avco Embassy President Bob Remy, hat in hand, admitting that he just couldn't crack the story. Well, Remy kind of took the news in stride, simply looked at Carpenter and asked, well, do you have anything else? And as it turns out, Carpenter did have something else. He walks out to his car, pops the trunk, and pulls out that script that he had written in 1974. And after reading the script, Bob Remy had none of those qualms that Hollywood execs had about the film just a few years earlier. He quickly greenlit the film, handed John Carpenter $7 million, his biggest budget yet, to bring this all to life. And that script, of course, was Escape from New York.
It's not the future we wanted, but the future that happened. Once a great city, now a high-security prison, designed to keep society's criminals in. But now, everything rides on getting one person out.
The survival of the human race, Pliskin. Something you don't give a shit about.
Kurt Russell stars as Snake Plissken in John Carpenter's science fiction action classic, Escape from New York.
You go in, find the president, bring him out in 24 hours, and you're a free man.
What if I'm a little late?
And no more Snake Plissken.
When I get back, I'm gonna kill you.
All right, before we get into the story of Escape from New York, we want to quickly thank everyone who has joined Cinema Shock Plus so far. We hope you've been enjoying these extended versions of these episodes. I think the further viewing picks on this series have been particularly good. I hope that Gary would agree with me, but I've been having a lot of fun with further viewing on this series, and including the one we're going to talk about for Escape from New York. I do want to welcome a couple of brand new members to Cinema Shock Plus that have joined since our last episode was recorded. We have got, once again, I'm going to remind you that the username that you put in for when you join Cinema Shock Plus is what we're going to read when we thank you. So with that said, I would like to thank Tripler1478 for joining at the Projectionist Tour. That means Tripler1478 gets the extended episodes and all that stuff, gets it early, gets all the bonus segments, all that good stuff. And then we've got DHG430, who actually joined at the auteur level, which is the highest level of Cinema Shock Plus. That means he's getting not only the stuff that Tripler1478 are getting, but he's getting the video of this right now. We're waving at you. You can only see this if you're an auteur member of Cinema Shock Plus. I'm flipping the bird lovingly to you right now, but otherwise you just gotta join if you want to get this good shit. Otherwise, you're getting all kinds of other good shit. Tripler1478, I mean, he's getting the extended episode. He's getting the full story of Escape from New York early before everyone else. So thank you guys for joining. We really appreciate it. We hope you're enjoying this John Carpenter series so far, because this has been a fun series, and the bonus stuff on this series has been great so far.
Yeah, even though you apparently don't want us to know who you are by hiding your names, we do appreciate you. Thank you so much for this, and take advantage of your merch discount, because you also get that. So there's good stuff.
I've got some John Carpenter themed stuff that I've got an idea for that we'll probably be throwing up in the merch shop here soon. So be on the lookout for that. But yes, thank you very much to both of these guys. I don't know if they're guys. Both of these folks who have joined this week, and everyone else who's joined Cinema Shock Plus. I really hope you're enjoying it. If you want to know what we're talking about when we say further viewing and stuff like that, if you want to know what me and Gary picked for double features for all the previous John Carpenter films, plus this one and the one we're doing next time, you can join Cinema Shock Plus for just a few bucks a month at cinemashock.net/plus. That's the commercial for this episode. We're done. Let's get into the story of Escape from New York. So while Halloween was, and always will be, the film that Carpenter's name is most associated with, Escape from New York, I think, in my personal opinion, I think it is more in line with his passions. Those passions being his total devotion to the classic Western and his deep, deep disdain for authority.
Yeah, he admits in tons of interviews that he has a fundamental problem with authority, and he loves to belittle it whenever possible. He says he just can't help himself. He achieved this in Escape by intentionally making literally everybody, the government, the police, the criminals, all just are corrupt people. I think he called it in one interview, literally, he just put like a nihilistic corruption blanket over the entire future. And so his hatred of authority is so pure and so beautiful. It can't just be the villains that are evil. The government is also evil. The police are evil. The president's a goof. It's just this glorious bipartisan cinematic middle finger to everybody. So good for you, John.
It's so far-fetched to think that the government could be evil.
I don't see it. But yeah, there's no way we can get through this episode without comparing it to real life.
All right, so we've talked in the past episodes on this series about Carpenter's auteur heroes, guys like Howard Hawks, who stamped their personal vision onto every genre. Like, Hawks may have been a titan of the Western, but he was also the master of the screwball comedy, the gangster film, the war film, science fiction, film noir. He kind of did it all, and that's the kind of career that Carpenter was hoping for. He didn't want to spend the rest of his career exclusively known as the horror guy. He never wanted that. He wanted to tackle action. He wanted to tackle sci-fi, and Escape from New York was his way to do that.
Poor guy shouldn't have been so good at it, I guess, if he didn't want to be the horror guy. For what it's worth, I think over the years he's made peace with it, of course. Like his social handles are the horror master.
Right,
But yeah, the irony is the job you took for a check, it turns out to be like the thing you're the best at. So he's really good at making horror movies. So
yeah, but he's good at the other stuff too.
Yeah, he is. I'm just saying, like people now expect that from him. But in his old words too, I mean, in one interview I know he said explicitly that he doesn't even always think of Escape from New York as a sci-fi film, that in his eyes it's a literal Western. And, like I talked about, he said all of his movies are kind of this odyssey, or, this is the lone gunfighter who has to take on the government and the criminals and everybody. So he's definitely still holding on to his actual Western movie. This might be the closest that he gets to it, potentially.
Well, yeah, this and Assault on Precinct 13. I mean, There are Western elements to some of his other movies as well, but I wish that he would have gotten the chance to make an actual Western. I mean, he's still kicking, but I just don't think he has much of a desire to make another movie at this point. I think he's happy making his music, is playing his video games, and cheering on the Knicks, who I guess he's pretty happy right now.
Well, yeah, as we record this, so congrats. But the closest I ever saw that he got, which is crazy to me to think about, and I love this movie, so I'm not saying I would necessarily change anything, but apparently he was the guy that Kurt Russell was pushing for on Tombstone. Like, that's what he wanted. But,
wow, that would have been interesting. Well, we might have to talk about Tombstone one day. We might have to do a roulette episode on that one, because I will talk about Tombstone for 4 hours. I love that movie. I fucking love that movie. Well, when he set out to make Escape from New York, he couldn't really do it alone. When Bob Raimi gave him the green light to make the movie, he only had one major note for Carpenter. He felt that the script was a little too dark, and he wanted it to be rewritten to be a little bit funnier and a little bit hipper. Those are the words that they used. So Carpenter turned to his funnier and hipper friend from his USC days, old Nick Castle, the literal man behind the mask in Halloween. He reached out to him to co-write a fresh draft of the script. And Castle's main function as a co-writer was to inject some quirky, eccentric humor into the bleak world that Carpenter had created. Because I guess Nick Castle's just a funny guy. We've all seen the picture of him with the Michael Myers mask and the Dr. Pepper. I mean, that's a funny guy. That's your funny friend, Nick Castle.
Oh, we have fun. We have fun.
So, but I do think the results of his rewrites are all over the film. And I think that sometimes it's easy to do because it is such a bleak world that's created in this film. But I think sometimes people forget just how funny Escape from New York is at times. And much of that came directly from Nick Castle. He's the one who created elements like the cabbie character, as well as the bizarre drag show that Snake Plissken stumbles upon, a scene that played on Castle's background as the son of a famous dance choreographer. We talked about that a couple episodes ago. We talked about Halloween. Castle even wrote the song that was used in that scene.
It's funny when you think about it. Bob Raimi's note had to be pretty incredible. Like, John, I love the script about a dystopian hellscape where the president's tortured by sadists in a trashed Manhattan, but can you make it a little more, I don't know, peppy, fun?
Yeah.
That would be cool. So
make it a little silly with this.
Yeah. So John Carpenter calls up Michael Myers and said, hey, let's get this a little lighter. One thing that stood out to me about this is I don't think before this series I realized how many of these people just keep coming back up. I think we dealt with like David Lynch again. His name comes up more often than I expected in the John Carpenter series, but it's just the more fresh on the brain, I think. So it's easy to make the comparisons. Just like the cast of people behind John Carpenter that like he keeps turning to for like different things. It's kind of interesting. I was also thinking about just now, like literally as we're talking about this, I was thinking, it is funny, like with Snake, adding the funnier elements to Snake, like to this movie in general. If they tried to just play it serious, like the whole thing so serious the whole time, I wonder if it would have worked as well. A and B, it's interesting to think about this movie in the scheme of action movie cinema, the movies that are going to come up, like if I had to compare him to like one action star, he's more of a Bruce Willis than he is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like it's
sure.
John McClane and Die Hard more so than Commando or. This is all before that, actually, which is kind of interesting because I feel like John McClane gets a lot of credit for being the character that's like the first like action star who's like the everyday guy or something. But I feel like Snake has a little bit of that in this. Like,
he definitely has a little bit of that in this, but I mean, he does have this background where he's sort of this seen by other people as this mythic character.
That's true. Yeah,
you've got all these people saying like, oh, "I thought you were dead." Everyone in this prison seems to have heard of Snake Plissken and his exploits, but he's also not unstoppable. I mean, he gets hurt. He gets shot in the leg with an arrow and like limps for the second half of the movie. So he's not like infallible like a Schwarzenegger Commando type. And that way, like, and watching it this time, I did think of John McClane in the way that he, limps around. He's bloodied. He's beat up. And Snake does get pretty beat up in this.
Yeah.
So with a fresh script locked in, Carpenter had to assemble his cast. A process that immediately turned into an uphill battle because the execs at Avco Embassy looked at the character of Snake Plissken and they wanted an established old school movie tough guy. And this might kind of play into what you were just saying, where they were wanting a more typical kind of action star. They were pushing for a Charles Bronson type. They were pushing for Charles Bronson. They were pushing for Tommy Lee Jones at one point. who you don't think of as an action guy, but, at the time he had done some war movies and things like that. But in fact, at one point, they actually went over Carpenter's head and offered the role to Tommy Lee Jones, who thankfully turned it down. And I say thankfully, I love Tommy Lee Jones, one of my favorite actors of all time. I always love watching him. But he would have brought a completely different energy to this role. And I think the movie would probably be remembered quite differently if he'd been cast as Snake Plissken. And Carpenter definitely didn't want Charles Bronson, despite the fact that Death Wish had been one of the inspirations for this film or for his script. For one, he was terrified of working with a huge star like Bronson. He was kind of worried that he would lose control on set if he had somebody with a kind of a bigger ego on set with him. Plus, he felt that by this point, Bronson was just way too old for the role. I mean, Bronson was pushing 60 at this time. I think he was 58, 59, but he had the weathered face of an even older man. I mean, like a 59-year-old Charles Bronson looks like he's in his 70s.
Yeah, he'd been kicking for a long time already in the movie biz, and I get it. He's like the action guy. I mean, we talked about the Death Wish inspiration, so I get it. But yeah, there's this level of absurdity, I feel like, also that you're only going to get from somebody you can trust, and casting a huge name like that at the time. For some reason in my head, it made me remember the stories of Kevin Smith that he would tell about when he worked with Bruce Willis on that movie Cop Out and how much that got out of hand. I think on one hand, he did tell it in the sense that it made Willis sound kind of asshole-ish, but I also just think there's a certain level of those guys that get defensive and protective of their reputation.
Yeah, their image.
They're more concerned with their rep than the movie's rep, too. Anyway, big stars just require more effort, so I think I get what Carpenter's talking about here. Like, he's looking for a certain thing, and he doesn't want to have to deal with Charles Bronson being Charles Bronson to get there.
It could also be kind of distracting for the role. For the audience, it's seeing someone like that in the role. Whereas, I mean, now we know Kurt Russell, but at the time, Kurt Russell was not like a big star, especially not for this. I mean, he had been a child star, but he wasn't a star for this type of movie at all.
I even saw it in a few places, and you may have too, and I don't know if it's just a rumor that spread unchecked because one dumb-ass article posted it, and it's an endless feedback loop of people quoting each other that this is fact. But Chuck Norris's name gets thrown in there and
I've
mentioned a lot
too,
for this. Yeah, and I never saw Carpenter Hill or anybody else mention it, but brother, let me tell you, bitch all day about AI just pulling up bullshit that you can't trust, but the internet is built on bullshit. And all it'd take is just one fucking blog post saying that he was considered, or an IMDb trivia fact, and 30 other blogs will run that shit as gospel. So I think that that's what happened. Because anyway, the main reason it's bullshit is almost everybody who cites it uses the same Charles Bronson point about him being considered a little too old for that role, but Chuck's career would have really just been kicking off at this point.
Yeah, in the early 80s, yeah.
Oh, I said kicking off. See what I did there?
I see,
yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. He was just about to get into Lone Wolf McQuade, Missing in Action, Code of Silence, Invasion USA, Delta Force 2, Missing in Action 2, Missing in Action 3, a fucking cartoon called Karate Commandos, The Hitmen, Sidekicks. Am I just looking for an excuse to name Chuck Norris properties? Maybe. Yes, I am. He had a hell of a fucking run too, which leads me to telling everyone about our new show, Chuck Talk with Gary. I'm just kidding.
I'd listen to it.
Thanks.
I'd listen to Chuck Talk.
Can you imagine Chuck Norris's Snake? The movie would have ended in 4 minutes. He wouldn't have landed a glider on the World Trade Center. He'd have just roundhouse kicked the 50-foot wall down and walked in. If your beard has its own fist, there's nobody in dystopian NYC that's going to stop you.
I mean, you are right about that sort of like weird internet echo chamber, and it's something that we have to kind of navigate when we're researching these, which is why I didn't mention Chuck Norris, because I couldn't find anyone officially attached to the film talking about it. I just found it as like 10 things you don't know about Escape from New York. And like anybody, I could fucking write anybody. I could write anything I wanted in that blog. And if I'm writing for fucking Screen Rant or something like that, then people are going to take it as gospel. But if I didn't hear it from John Carpenter or Deborah Hill or Kurt Russell or somebody involved in this, then I don't consider it verified.
Well, I'll tell you the good thing that it led to for me, Justin. Prepare yourself. But thinking about John Carpenter and Chuck Norris together, it led me to somebody online recommending that if you haven't seen a movie called Silent Rage, you should. And I did.
Yeah.
Here's the pitch as it was presented to me. Do you like John Carpenter? and you like Chuck Norris,
Yes.
this is Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers in a John Carpenter movie. And you know what? It fucking is.
Oh, yeah? It lived up to that? I've never seen Silent Rage.
Yeah, I know I can't spend all day on this, and I had never heard of this movie, but the movie opens up on a guy named John Kirby at home with his family. He's clearly having a mental episode, and the opening 5 minutes of the movie are one unbroken shot of him moving through his house, finally snapping and murdering his entire family with an axe.
Wow.
He has like 2 lines at the beginning of the movie, and for the rest of the movie, this guy never speaks again.
Wow.
Basically, he kills his family. Chuck Norris is the sheriff, comes in and takes him down, but after the guy gets arrested, he breaks his cuffs because he's extra strong somehow, and the police end up shooting him and killing him, supposedly, except they don't, because he survives, and somehow his doctor, who knows he's crazy and has tried to come find him and chase him down before all of this happens, like, so he has the doctor chasing him, you've got the unbroken shot, you've got all of this stuff. There's this group of scientists that are trying to do this experimental medicine that heals you really fast, like Wolverine style, and so they decide to do it to this guy, and he gets it, comes back to life, and he's basically unstoppable. Naturally, he escapes the hospital and he comes back to town. Now, he never wears a mask, but he kind of doesn't need one. He's played by Brian Libby, who has a face that's just weird enough that when he's emotionless, it's plenty creepy. Mm-hmm. It's almost like Tom Waits or Ron Perlman kind of face.
Yeah,
like
okay.
He's one of those guys that if you see him, you might know him. I think he's literally in every single Frank Darabont movie.
Uh-huh.
But I was reading about it more, and the director says he wasn't interested in slasher movies. He was thinking of it as like a Frankenstein kind of thing. But the fucker uses a POV shots of the killer stalking. The soundtrack synths it up after the escape, and the killer's in a jumpsuit. And when he's in shadows or shot from behind, the whole final act is him stalking a woman through the hospital. The guy's Michael Myers. It's kind of underrated. I cannot believe I had never heard of this movie. If you've had enough of this, too bad. Hold on. I'm going to keep going for just a second. The movie Silent Rage was directed by a guy named Michael Miller. Now, if you're not familiar with the name Michael Miller, he was kind of building up his name at the time because he had directed 2 movies called Street Girls and Jackson County Jail. Around 1977, he was being approached by John Peters to direct a new movie from a young writer named John Carpenter called Eyes of Laura Mars.
What the fuck?
He got fired or left the movie because of creative differences with the producers, I think. And either way, he never actually did that movie and instead did Silent Rage, leaving Eyes of Laura Mars behind. But that movie, if you'll recall, also starred Tommy Lee Jones, who was one of the people considered for Escape from New York that, of course, didn't take the role. But if you didn't think I was going to fucking land this plane, I did it.
Wow. Well done, Gary.
You're welcome.
That was a tangent that looped back around to being relevant.
Somehow we got back here.
Wow. And now I want to watch Silent Rage.
Literally, the biggest complaint I had about Silent Rage that I thought they were going to fuck up is the whole early parts of the movie. I was literally watching it with the wife because she also wanted to see it. And we both at the same time were like, this would have been better if John Carpenter scored it. Like, that was the thing. We were like, this needed the score over it. Like, because in the first, like, quarter of the movie, they don't use music for some reason. Like, barely any music. Like, when he's first fighting Chuck Norris the first time, all of that stuff, there's, like, no music. And I started to understand that thought that they had given to Halloween about no music and how it wasn't scary. I was like, what are they doing here? When he escapes the hospital and comes back to town, they do start using music, and they use a synth score. And so you're like, oh, go fuck yourself, you didn't watch Halloween or something.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, like when he's walking from behind, like the back of his head, he looks like Michael Myers, and he's in the jumpsuit and everything. It's pretty wild.
Now I got to somehow segue this back into talk about Kurt Russell.
Yeah, sorry. I warned you.
Yeah, you did. Well, they didn't get Chuck Norris for this movie. They got Kurt Russell. There, I did it.
You did it. Success.
Well, I mean, Carpenter, he wanted Kurt Russell kind of, I think he kind of wanted him from the get-go because they'd worked together on Elvis, of course, as we've discussed a couple episodes ago. But, Kurt Russell, he had got his start as a Disney kid, like I said. And Avco Embassy, the studio, they had a hard time seeing past the Mickey Mouse ears. I mean, Russell began acting at the age of 10. He spent a decade starring in squeaky clean family comedies for the Mouse House. While movies like The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes and The Strongest Man in the World. They made him, according to Robert Osborne, the studio's top star of the 1970s. It didn't exactly scream action movie star.
Both of those movies he was in with Cesar Romero, by the way. He also starred with Cesar Romero in Now You See Him, Now You Don't in 1972. None of that's really relevant, but you brought up the other two, and I just thought it was interesting.
Well, I think they're a trilogy, right? I think they're related. I think don't take that as gospel, but I'm pretty sure that Kurt Russell plays the same character in 3 movies in a row.
I've got nothing else to add to that except but you're right. Maybe it's a trilogy. Maybe that's why I was just like, wow, that's weird. Like Cesar Romero and Kurt Russell just were probably like best buds.
Cesar Romero was the Joker in the old Batman show, if you're wondering who Gary's talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's an old person thing.
He was the Adam West 1960s Batman. He played the Joker.
To be clear, it was before my time, too.
Like a long time before your time, but it was on syndication when we were kids, and if you're like me, we used to watch it a lot on like Nick at Night or one of those channels or something.
Right.
Well, Kurt Russell had spent some time when he was younger trying to kind of step out of the acting sphere and pursue his other great passion, professional baseball. Russell played second base in the minor leagues for teams like the Bend Rainbows, the Walla Walla Islanders, and the El Paso Diablos. And he was legitimately good. Like, he even led the league in batting average at one point. But in 1973, there was a runner turning second base, crashed into him, and it caused a severe tear in Russell's rotator cuff, effectively ending his athletic career and forcing him back into acting full-time.
Not that it matters, but I don't think I'd realize that this movie, well, I guess now Elvis, was the earliest role that I'd seen Kurt Russell in. I guess I never thought about it, but I guess I'd also never realized how much shit this guy did. Because you're talking about a break in the early 70s, but it wasn't like he wasn't in some form of movies or TV series during that time. The world, I looked this up, the world has not been without at least one, usually multiple up until the late 90s, new Kurt Russell acting roles since 1962. Every year, you've gotten some new Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
They weren't all huge roles, but he was in like all the shows early on, like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Gilligan's Island, Lost in Space, The Fugitive, Gunsmoke, Police Story, even Hawaii Five-0 right before Elvis. So this dude was working. Yeah. And in fact, it is, I thought this was interesting too. You were talking about the biggest star of the 70s. Apparently, in his last ever filmed moment, Walt Disney is on camera bragging on how successful he thought Kurt Russell was going to be. And so
I read a story that one of the last things, if not the very last thing that he wrote like in his journal was Kurt Russell's name.
What a legacy to have for yourself. Like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now, am I contributing anything useful to this episode about Escape from New York? No, not yet. But it's still pretty cool.
We're getting there. Well, Kurt Russell was somewhat desperate to break out of the Disney mold as his contract with the studio started to run down, so he started looking for darker work in the mid to late 70s. And in 1975, he starred in a gritty, made-for-TV movie called The Deadly Tower, where he played Charles Whitman, the real-life mass murderer responsible for the 1966 Texas Tower shooting. And this was a shocking, highly calculated departure from his wholesome image that proved that he could handle more adult material.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw this movie, and this is, again, irrelevant. But for a hot minute, I was majoring in, like, sociology and psychology, and that Texas shooting always stood out to me. Because that's the one where he does this, like, shooting people, and during his autopsy, they found out that he had this brain tumor that may have contributed to like why he ended up losing it. And that's always been like something that just stuck with me. It's like, oh, that's a weird thing that could just happen to somebody someday. You just get a weird brain tumor that pushes on the wrong gland and then you just kill a bunch of people.
Yeah. It's a wild story. I think there have been a couple other movies made about him as well. I mean, it's one of the first big mass shootings in U.S. history, I believe. But the true turning point for Kurt Russell would be the 1979 TV movie Elvis, we've talked about, where he first met John Carpenter. And the two men they clicked immediately. Russell's performance had been a success. It earned him an Emmy nomination. And more importantly, during their long hours on the set, Carpenter had seen a tough, rugged masculinity in Russell. So when it came time to cast Escape from New York, he knew that Russell could pull off the badassery that would be required for the role of Snake Plissken.
Hell yeah.
And eventually Carpenter won the argument against the studio. Russell rewarded his trust by delivering what I consider one of the most iconic, career-defining roles in movie history. He turned Snake Plissken into an icon, and in turn, Snake Plissken turned Russell into an action movie star.
I'm loving this career strategy that Kurt Russell's got going on. He's really just fucking burning down Cinderella's castle for the insurance money here. He's like, I need these fucking mouse ears off me so fast. He's like, you know what? I'm going to play a mass murderer, a drugged out rock star, and then I'm going to be a goddamn one-eyed chain-smoking nihilist. So, you can't fucking kick me out of the Mickey Mouse Club. I quit. I will say, when you're digging in on his career, he almost seems like he was a natural for exactly what Carpenter would be looking for in a male star. And not just because of those like piercing eyes or that glorious square jaw of his, which I mean, damn. It's easy to see why Disney picked the guy. He's a stud. Russell goes back to the 60s, and he's working with like tough hombres and westerns and things Carpenter probably would have been interested in. In fact,
true,
in 1964, he was the lead kid in a movie called Guns of Diablo. It's on YouTube if you want to see it. But it stars Charles Bronson. How's that for some full circle shit? I wonder if Bronson, if he knew that Kurt Russell would be wanted over him for a role later, if he'd have just like taken Kurt out as a kid.
That's not the career move that Charles Bronson needed to make, I don't think.
Right, you're probably right.
Murdering a child, yes. Well, once Russell was cast, Carpenter surrounded him with one of the most eclectic casts of the 1980s, starting with the role of the President of the United States. For that pivotal spot, Carpenter brought back his Halloween star Donald Pleasence. Now, Pleasence was initially baffled by this offer, asking Carpenter why in the world he thought that a classically trained British actor should be cast as the American commander-in-chief. Carpenter responded with an impassioned letter, handwritten letter, wrote Donald Pleasence a letter, sent it in the mail, explaining that he explicitly wanted a brilliant performer who could bring a sense of comedy and utter ridiculousness to the role. And we know that Donald Pleasence can go over the top. We've seen Donald Pleasence go over the top. He wanted to show, John Carpenter wanted to show this grand symbol of institutional power being completely stripped of his dignity. And Pleasence, in my opinion, completely understood the assignment. I love him in this movie. He didn't even attempt an American accent. He decided to just lean into his natural British accent. Although Carpenter did used to joke when people would ask about this, reporters and stuff, he would joke that the character was the illegitimate love child of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and that would explain the accent.
Yeah, well, in the commentary, Carpenter actually says that he got it from Donald Pleasence, that like Donald Pleasence came to him with basically some fanfic that he had written. And he had made up an entire backstory that Margaret Thatcher had basically taken over the entire world and turned the United States back into a colony. He had this whole thing, and I think she like married Ronald Reagan or something, and then Carpenter's like, then I used none of that.
But it does explain the accent.
But there it is. He says he also at the end too with Donald Pleasence. It's the first signs of the crazy Loomis you get where he's just like, "You're the Duke, you ain't number one."
Yeah.
He's just, but he says he wasn't sure in that ending if he wanted Donald Pleasence to be the guy that kills the Duke or Lee Van Cleef. And he says that Donald Pleasence was so funny that he was just like, when he was talking it out, Donald Pleasence was like, "I've killed people before. I know how to do this. I've flown in planes. I've dropped bombs." He was like, at a certain moment, Donald Pleasence became more macho than even Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Pleasence was a war veteran. We talked about this a little bit during our Halloween episode, but I think that's part of why he worked so well in the role, is because he layered the absurdity of this character with real darkness that he had experienced. Because during World War II, he was a member of the Royal Air Force, and his plane was shot down by Nazis, which led to a year spent in a German POW camp. So, when it came time for him to film the scenes where the Duke holds him hostage and tortures him, he's drawing from his experiences as an actual prisoner of war to capture this character's raw vulnerability. In fact, he was even the one who suggested that the humiliating blonde wig that the president is forced to wear, pushing that line between kind of tragedy and ridiculousness to its limit. Now, for the role of Police Commissioner Bob Houck, Carpenter's associate producer Peggy Brand suggested Lee Van Cleef, drawing on his background in classic westerns, including a small but memorable role in High Noon, and of course his work with Sergio Leone, specifically For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where he appeared alongside Clint Eastwood. In fact, it was Van Cleef's casting that inspired Kurt Russell's take on the role of Pliskin. He figured that if he was going to work with one of Clint's frequent co-stars, then he might as well play Snake as Clint Eastwood. And thus, the iconic, raspy Snake Plissken voice was born, just one of many character quirks that Russell brought to the role. That eye patch, the iconic Snake Plissken eye patch, that was actually Kurt Russell's idea as well, and one that Carpenter immediately loved because it reminded him of John Wayne's character in True Grit. Oh, one of his beloved westerns.
And going back, I mean, according to Carpenter, that was something he even pictured before, that like when he initially thought of the story, the person in his head was Clint Eastwood rolling up into New York City. So in the commentary, in fact, like Kurt brings up, he remembers him and Carpenter and Van Cleef all sitting around talking out, getting some of that like Eastwood energy in the role. And as far as Van Cleef, I mean, this has to be like dream casting for John Carpenter. It feels like, being a fan of those old school westerns. He's obviously very familiar with him, and he loved Van Cleef as a tough guy, and that's where the name Bob Houck comes from. He says, actually, we've talked about this a million times, but Carpenter likes to use names, especially from his life, and Bob Houck was his math teacher. And he said he remembered that he was like a real tough guy in school. So Van Cleef was a tough guy, by the way. He had a leg injury that, according to Carpenter in the commentary, he says it was from a horse. He said his wife told him about a horse falling on him in Italy. But I also believe I read that he was actually in a car accident. But either way, his leg had been crushed at one point, and his doctors told him he was never going to walk again, at least not normally, and he was going to have to find a new career. But instead, the dude spent a lot of time learning to walk again and actually making it work, and had this like steel brace built for his leg to help him so he could move around. But apparently for like the rest of his life, he was always in pain from that leg. So some of the hardest scenes for him were always like walking and talking. Carpenter mentioned that some actors have trouble walking and talking at the same time anyway, but then on top of that, he was having to worry about his leg, and like sometimes it would buckle. He was hoping it wouldn't buckle underneath him, and his wife was always there with him to like help him out and in between, and because of how his leg was. The other crazy thing for Van Cleef is that he was only on set for like 24 hours. I think that's as long as they had him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was basically like a one-night shoot before he had to fly back to Los Angeles. So as they had filmed him, the bad part is we'll talk more about this, they're filming at night. And Carpenter says the next day when he watched the dailies, he realized that, to his horror, some of his close-ups were entirely out of focus. And because they couldn't afford to fly him back, he had to just use the blurry shots in the final cut. I don't think they stood out to me at all, but apparently to him.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if the 24-hour thing was just at a certain location shoot, because the majority of his scenes, we'll talk about the locations here in a minute, but the majority of his scenes were shot in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe this was just when they were on, like you said, like on location.
Yeah, because I knew they shot a couple of location scenes with him, but all the indoor scenes with him, which is the majority of his scenes, were shot on location.
I just can't imagine the horror you feel if you're like sleeping, you wake up and you realize like, oh, my shots are blurry, and you can't afford to bring back this guy, and you're just like, you know what? Weird character trait. Bob Houck is a blurry guy. It's an artistic choice. But Carpenter says about Van Cleef, quote, "You didn't have to tell Lee too much about how to play a scene. He was going to play it one way, and that was it. And what you got was what you wanted." According to Tom Atkins, I didn't know this either, but in the On Set with John Carpenter book by Kim Gottlieb Walker, Tom Atkins in there talks about that Van Cleef was also suffering from cancer at the time. So everybody knew he was kind of in his last days, which was interesting. I don't think I ever knew that before.
I mean, he didn't die until the late 80s, but I remember reading that quote as well from Tom Atkins.
My other favorite one in there from Carpenter was that he was telling the story about that he went and had dinner at Lee's house one night with him and his wife, and he said that he drank a whole lot and had a lot of guns.
Yeah.
And all the guns were loaded, and he would constantly say, "You want to see my guns? I will remind you, they're all loaded."
He was loaded and his guns were loaded.
Right. And Carpenter said, anyway, you wouldn't want to mess with Lee Van Cleef.
No, I would not dream of messing with Lee Van Cleef. I'd be scared of him.
if we can, I want to go back to Kurt Russell for just a minute too, because just a few things I love about this character. You were mentioning like the eye patch. Snake Plissken is very popular. He's iconic, like you said, but I still feel like he's severely underrated as a cool, badass anti-hero character. Like he gets love, but I feel like a lot of people, I don't know. I don't feel like he's as huge as like some of these action movie characters. Like I don't know where he would rank in the list. Like if people were having to name off like action movie stars. So, but anyway, story number one, Snake Plissken is actually named after this guy from Cleveland. I guess a friend of John Carpenter knew. He apparently was like this cool high school tough guy who had a snake tattoo, and I think his name was actually like Larry Plissken, but he called himself Snake Plissken.
I wouldn't go by Larry Plissken either. That's a terrible name.
He could apparently make his tattoo dance.
Was it in the same place that the movie Snake Plissken's tattoo is? Where does the...
I tried to confirm that, but I couldn't confirm it was like actually on his belly.
Where does that snake end? Where's the end of that
wrapped
snake?
around his cock.
Yeah, it's like all the way on the tip. It goes all the way around like a corkscrew.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. John said he just always hung on to that story that there was this guy named Snake Plissken out there, and he just thought anybody with a snake tattoo is named Snake Plissken. That's the right kind of person I want for this character. And I picture that the real Snake Plissken is at this point in time when the movie is coming out, just some high school washout who's got a snake tattoo on his belly and he can make it jiggle for beer money. And the
Larry, do it again. Larry.
The next thing you know, this movie comes out and all of a sudden he's a god. I'm just saying, I hope he got laid at his high school reunion. That's all.
Yeah,
Like he was like, that was a real life movie about me, babe. I swear to God.
Call me Snake.
The other story is that before they had actually nailed down the look, they were trying to figure all of this out, and the studio made them do publicity shots. Kurt Russell says they brought him in, and he had like standard military fatigues on. And when they got the photos back, Carpenter and Russell said they both looked at it and were like, no, this is like join the army vibes. Like that's not the guy we're doing. We're not doing a recruitment ad. He's like, actually, this is kind of the opposite of what we're going for. So they worked on the rest of the outfit. And you mentioned that Kurt Russell had an idea for the eye patch that Carpenter loved, because he said, like, I don't think anybody's done that since John Wayne. That's really cool. And so they also worked out the story for like the camouflage, which you hear briefly in the movie, but like that it's black and white because he was in this like Siberian war. Oh, and then the other last thing, and then I'll shut the fuck up. While the eye patch is cool, it does really fuck up your depth perception, apparently. So he was terrified he was going to like crash into things constantly. So to fix it, like he had two different eye patches. Like there was the solid black one that you get for the close-ups, but then he had a see-through like mesh eye patch that he wore for like action scenes, so he doesn't end up killing himself doing something.
Or just running into a wall or something, because you have no peripheral vision on one side.
You're the ultimate badass until you realize that half the movie he's wearing like a screen door on his face because he didn't want to run into craft services or something. Another thing I'll bring up that leads into our next part here is that when I was watching this, and these guys are all awesome, but I was telling my wife, it's funny, I don't think I've ever thought about this movie in this way before, but watching it now, I wonder if they could have ever known just how like every fucking person in the movie is somebody that's really good. It's somebody you recognize now that's very good.
Well, I mean, who do you mean? Like, because a lot of these guys were already pretty well established.
I mean, I guess they probably were, but I don't know. I just mean like the names that we could go through in the cast. Like it's just like an all-star cast list. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean, this cast is like, it is a veritable rogues gallery of character actors. I mean, first of all, one of the bigger ones is probably Ernest Borgnine, who played the cabbie. I mean, Ernest Borgnine had been around for ages at this point. He was a very well-known character actor, very like eccentric kind of guy. Then you've got for Brain, who's the guy who controls the oil and electricity on the island. He cast the great Harry Dean Stanton, who's already well established. I mean, he'd already done Alien at this point, too. I mean, not as established as, he'd go on to do Pretty in Pink and things like that, but obviously he was already, a well-respected character actor. And then, of course, Brain is paired in the movie with Carpenter's then wife, Adrienne Barbeau, who plays Maggie.
I think you're really downplaying the fact that Harry Dean Stanton is actually Harold Hellman. He and Snake were partners 4 years earlier in Kansas City until Hellman double-crossed and ran out on Snake, and it cost Fresno Bob his life.
Fresno Bob.
Weird piece of trivia about Adrienne Barbeau as Maggie. Well, there's actually a few different weird pieces of trivia about Adrienne Barbeau as Maggie. One, she apparently made that, like, that's a legit, like, turkey breast or rib cage or something, like,
on her hair.
Yeah, on her hair. Like, she made that herself. Like, just that was a character choice, and she did it. Props to her for that.
Well, where else are you going to buy hair accessories when you're in the Manhattan prison?
Well, I guess
you have to make it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's really thinking about her character. That's what's important. So also, they never shot her dead body on location. It just had her getting hit by the Duke's car. And in post-production, Carpenter was like, the audience needs to see that she is dead. Like that did happen. So he actually ended up having her lie out and cover herself in fake blood in the garage of their old house. And they just filmed that there.
Wow.
Some guys get their woman diamonds, but John Carpenter gets you a corpse. Shot as a corpse.
You are a corpse.
Randomly, I have, not even on purpose, I just had the book, the On Set with John Carpenter book open, and it's Adrienne Barbeau, and I noticed a couple of things about her.
What were those things?
Well, the caption of it is a quote from Dean Cundy about her. It says, Adrienne was great. She was looking at dailies one evening, and I remember her saying, oh my God, I'm wearing watermelons. She's a very sweet lady. That's the quote from that son of a bitch, Dean Cundy.
She's a very sweet lady, and it was Adrienne talking about her own boobies.
Oh, man. Now, let's talk about Ernest Borgnine real quick, because, man, that guy's got a 6-decade-long career, and going back to, like, 1951, he's just a wild person and a fun addition randomly here. Apparently, Carpenter and Nick Castle originally wanted Mickey Rooney. That was their idea for this part, but he refused to learn the lines. He told Carpenter, we'll figure it out when I get there. And Carpenter said he thought about it, was like, that is not for me. That's not what we're doing. So recast that role with Ernest Borgnine. But that scene where he just like casually lights a Molotov cocktail while he's talking to Snake, I fucking love that. Just chit-chatting about, I had to see the show. I don't usually come out all by myself. And Ray Stella tells a story too that he was still pretty, like, he just took people at their word. While they were filming that scene, he was just like, that's not real gasoline in those bottles, is it? And he's like, hell yeah, it's real gasoline. What do you think I'd use? And he's like, okay, well, don't, make sure you throw it like away from the cameras. And he's like, I'll just do my best. I got to throw it. He didn't realize at the time, like, Borgnine is just like fucking with him, basically.
Did Ray Stella not realize that there's like a special effects unit on the movie whose Ernest Borgnine didn't bring his own Molotov cocktails to set? I don't think.
Well, I think that's probably what Borgnine was thinking too. Like, what's this kid's problem? But
you know, movies are make believe, right, Ray?
Carpenter fully admits that, like you mentioned before, Cabby is all Nick Castle. Like, from the stage show to him just being lighthearted and the storyteller that fills you in on details that you need. He's been driving the same cab for 30 years. And actually, if anything, he's almost too lovable, because Russell and Carpenter in the commentary talk about how they were always battling how shitty of a person Snake is supposed to be, essentially. Yeah. And so, like, a good example of it is, like, Kurt Russell's like, they kept talking about, I'm holding a gun on this guy, but it's like kind of like holding a gun to a puppy's head. Like, what am I doing? What are we going for here?
Yeah, Borgnine is always so lovable. There's something about his face. I mean, granted, one of my first experiences with him was like on I didn't even remember what it was. It was some sitcom on in the 90s. Like, this is before I saw the Poseidon Adventure or any of his like early movie roles. And what was that? Was it like Caroline in the City or something like that? Like, it was like one of those like short-lived 90s sitcoms where he played a bellhop or like the elevator operator or something in an apartment building. Am I insane? Is this something? Is this one of those?
That does sound really familiar, actually.
Okay, this isn't one of those like hallucinations.
McHale's Navy is what they all knew him from, I think.
Yeah. The Single Guy. That's what it was. The Single Guy. You remember that show with like Jonathan? Not Jonathan Richman. That's the guy from the fucking Weekend at Bird. Jonathan Silverman. It was that show. Anyway, none of this matters.
Wow. That was like a memory unlock for me. That's crazy.
It was weird. Anyway, Yeah. Okay. Let's keep talking about the other cast members. Okay?
Well, I did want to tell you one more quick side thing that I did find when I was reading about Ortis Porknight. There's this clip you can find on YouTube, film on like Fox News in the morning, or it's like Fox and Friends or something, and he's on there. He's 91 years old, and he's just put out a book, and they're talking to him, and they're like, "What's the secret to long life?" And he's like, "I don't dare tell you." And they're like, "Oh, come on, give me something." And he leans over to the guy, and he's very obviously on mic because it's very loud, and he goes, "I masturbate a lot."
Legendary. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll see you bastards in 2136.
Life lessons from Ernie Borgnine. Love it. So we mentioned earlier John Carpenter's wife, Adrienne Barbeau, who was also in The Fog, of course. She's on this movie in a fairly significant supporting role. But the movie, I mean, it was kind of a family affair all around because you've got Kurt Russell's wife, Susan Hubley, who he had met on Elvis, where she played Priscilla Presley. She appears here in a fairly small role, but it's a very memorable scene. She plays the girl that Snake encounters in the Chock full of Nuts diner. And then Russell's brother-in-law, Larry Franco, served as a producer on the film.
Yeah, we got to bring up Larry Franco on the last episode about The Fog. It's funny in the commentary at the beginning, they're talking about just like, oh yeah, we filmed this. It's Carpenter and Russell is the commentary, and they're just like, this was great. Barbeau's name pops up, and Carpenter points out, there's my first wife, Adrienne, and they see Susan Hubley pop up on screen, and Carpenter's like, oh, there's your ex-wife. This one's some fun memories. A few minutes later, they're both like, oh, there's Larry Franco. Kurt's like, yeah, he was my brother-in-law at the time. He's not married to her anymore either. What is going on here?
Well, elsewhere in the film, The Fog's Tom Atkins joined as a character named Remy, another one of Carpenter's Easter eggs, obviously named after Bob Remy. Then another Carpenter regular, Charles Cyphers, plays. He's not technically a cop here, although he is sort of the ultimate cop here. Right. As the American Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the Duke. To cast the film's primary villain, Carpenter wanted someone bigger than life, someone that felt untouchable, and nobody fits that bill better than Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes, of course, the youngins might, or not even youngins at this point, this show's been on for fucking 30 years, but a lot of people know him as Chef from South Park, obviously. But at the time, he was primarily known as a musician. For a lot of the 60s and 70s, he was one of the creative forces behind Stax Records. Then he embarked on his own career as a recording artist. He had albums like Hot Buttered Soul, Black Moses, both of which are fucking incredible. If you haven't listened to Isaac Hayes' music, I mean, both of those albums are amazing, I think. But he first dipped his toes into the film business on the music side of things, writing the score for several films, including Shaft. Of course, legendary score, legendary theme song. He won an Academy Award for Best Original Song for that song, which actually made him only the third black person in history to win an Oscar at that time. Isn't that insane? In the fucking early 70s? That's insane to me. Yeah. But it's, I had to double fact check that one to make sure it was true, and it unfortunately was true. But then in the mid-1970s, after Shaft, he started working a little bit as an actor. He appeared in some classic blaxploitation films like Three Tough Guys, and probably his most iconic role, or his biggest role in blaxploitation, was as the lead character in Truck Turner.
That one, I've never seen Truck Turner, by the way, but now I want to, because you mentioned it here, and even in the commentary, John Carpenter and Kurt Russell are talking about him, and they're like, and Kurt's like, they were like, this was kind of like his breakout, right? And then Carpenter's like, oh, he's in Truck Turner, and he's like, oh, fuck yeah, I forgot about that. They were like they both really liked Truck Turner, and I had not heard of it.
Yeah, well, and John, the theme song from Truck Turner is used in Kill Bill as well, so you've at least heard the music from Truck Turner.
Interesting.
Yeah. By 1980, Isaac Hayes was kind of considered the undisputed king of cool. And Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who's producing this film, like she has all these previous films, They knew that he would capture the very specific type of swagger that they wanted for their villain. Someone who came across as so dominant and smooth that his authority over a lawless wasteland was believable the second that he stepped on screen.
Yeah, and there was something about his energy that he's just so charismatic in general, and even like Deborah Hill, like in interviews, he's one of the people that she praises a lot, just saying that when things were tough on set or anything, just Isaac Hayes had like the best energy out of anybody, just like would keep people happy and pumped up. And Kurt said he was on board to fight too, like in the fight scene. Like,
oh yeah,
like just said basically when they went to do that, he said he was like, man, I was surprised. Isaac Hayes wanted in, like he was not scared.
He's a pretty big dude. He's a pretty big guy. Well, playing the Duke's right-hand man, a character named Romero, which you could probably assume who that character's named after, knowing John Carpenter's history with his little Easter eggs.
Did you see, I meant to look this up, and I couldn't find it anywhere on a brief glance, but the Duke, I mean, he's the Duke because of the Duke, right? Like, probably.
Oh, like John Wayne?
Like John Wayne?
Mean, I didn't see that anywhere, but I would have to assume that. I mean, yeah, right?
Yeah, that's what I felt like, but yeah. Anyway.
I did not see that explicitly stated anywhere, but I bet you're right. I mean, how could it not be? I mean, it's the Duke. So, as Romero, John Carpenter cast Frank Doubleday, who had played the gang member in Assault on Precinct 13, who had shot the little girl, the guy who kind of set all the events of that film into motion. I love him in this role. He's very eccentric, very fucking weird. I watched this movie twice this week, and I cannot take my eyes off of every decision that Frank Doubleday makes during this movie. It's so bizarre and so memorable as like a role that a lot of people would not have done a lot with because he's just sort of like a sidekick. But he just...
I loved him, and I'm glad you're saying this because I had made a special note to just mention how much I loved him in this. Like, he was all in on this, from the hair,
which I think was his idea, right? Wasn't the hair his idea?
Yeah, I had read that the hair was completely his idea. He was wearing fake teeth, and so
I would hope those were not his real teeth.
Well, John Carpenter says at the beginning, the first time you see him, when he walks up and he's just, gives them instructions that they got to leave in 20 seconds or whatever. Carpenter's like, I wish I could have overdubbed that because you could hear him talking through his damn teeth, but something like that. But he was like, we just didn't have money to do it. But I mean, I loved it. I thought everything about the scene where he's like looking at Adrienne Barbeau's cleavage and then he opens his own shirt. He opens his own shirt. And I just loved him. I thought exactly what you said. It was like this role that could have just been just another henchman kind of person, but he turns it into like a memorable person in the movie.
Even when he's not the focus of the scene and like other characters, like if you watch him to the side, he's doing like weird stuff like looking there's this one scene where he's walking away from Snake and he just like points at him as he's walking away from him. It's just very, even his death scene, the way that he dies is eccentric. The way that he lets out his final breath is so weird, and I just love him in this, and it makes me like, and he's very memorable in Assault on Precinct 13 too, even though it's a brief role. Like, you very much remember him, and he was pretty eccentric in that, the way that he played that role, and it kind of makes me sad that I haven't seen him in more stuff because it feels like this is a guy who should be like this like go-to character actor.
I 100% went down the same path because I was like, what else is he in? Why have I not seen him in more? And I don't know the answer to that, but he does. He's obviously like, he puts everything into the role. One of the things I read about, in the filming of this was I heard it from a few different places. Like, people were talking about how like loose Carpenter was with direction, that like, people say he's very business and matter of fact. I think we may have talked about this a little bit before, but that he's also like fun. Like he's not like, very strict and demanding and like harsh on you. He wants to get shit done, but he's not, pushy or like a jerk about it, I guess is what I'm looking for or something. But anyway, they were talking about like this one had extra pressure because it's the first time they're using a union when they're filming. So they have like these strict rules, no overtime. So they're like working faster than normal. They're doing all this other stuff. There's a lot of pressure. We'll get into it, but like the weather's not great for this and all of this other stuff. But like one thing that he let people do was like, hey, do something with this, like with your role. Like, and so it feels like Frank Doubleday, I guess is what I'm going for, is like he really ran with that.
Yeah.
I'm picturing that role wasn't written any specific way.
Yeah.
And he just did a thing and Carpenter was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm into it. Well, and if you look and listen closely, you'll also recognize a few other Carpenter regulars in the cast in small roles. You've got John Strobel, who briefly appeared in The Fog. He's the guy in the convenience store at the beginning of the movie, and then he's dead later on in the movie. Well, he plays a character named Cronenberg, Dr. Cronenberg. He's the doctor who injects Snake with the tiny little bombs in his neck. And then Nancy Stevens, who played Nurse Marion in Halloween. She shows up as the stewardess who hijacks Air Force One. And, of course, George Buck Flower. He makes his second appearance in a Carpenter movie. He's just credited as Drunk. He's the guy that Snake finds wearing the president's transmitter. A role that George Buck Flower seems to have been born to play. He just seems like he's drunk all the time. I mean, I don't think he is. I just think that he's really good at playing that.
I was going to say, I'm starting to believe that George Buck Flower just is that guy. Like, they just go pick him up at home and drive him to set and tell him to just play along with this. They just roll with it. But, yeah, I don't think I realized at the time that was Nancy Stevens as the stewardess who's taking over the airplane. But the Secret Service guy who's trying to break the door down to get into the cockpit, that is the son of Gerald Ford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He was just trying to be an actor? Or was he an actor?
I guess. Like, they had somehow just gotten him, and the commentary Carpenter talks about it. It's like, oh, by the way, that's Gerald Ford's son there. I forget what his first name is now, but he said that the next time he saw him was at, like, Gerald Ford's funeral or something. Like,
wow.
Went to it. Yeah.
Well, if you... this is just a weird bit of casting information that I ran across when I was researching this, but if you keep your eyes peeled... Because I literally found this because I was scrolling the cast list and came across this name, and I was like, that name sounds really familiar. I'm going to look up, why do I know that name? Well, during the Broadway show scene, there's a young actor named Roger Bumpass who plays one of the dancers. You can't see him good, but he's on the stage. He's one of the dancers on the stage. And these days, Roger Bumpass, if you recognize that name, it's because he is universally known as the voice of Squidward on SpongeBob SquarePants. So, if you had SpongeBob reference in Escape from New York on your bingo card, on your Cinema Shock bingo card for today, then congratulations.
Good. That is a deep pull. So that's...
Yeah. There are a few other fun and often uncredited roles in the film as well. You've got Nick Castle has a small cameo. As does Carpenter. I think Carpenter's like on the helicopter. I think he might be the helicopter pilot or something like that.
He's playing violin in the pit too.
Yeah, is Dean Cundy is in the pit playing saxophone. Somebody else, one of the other producers is in there as well, I think. Deborah Hill and Jamie Lee Curtis both have voice cameos. Curtis's voice is the very first voice you hear in the film. She's the one giving the kind of like overview of this future. She's the narrator, I guess you would say. So she is but you won't see her name in the credits, but it's very unmistakably Jamie Lee Curtis's voice.
They have like some kind of connection this way, I guess, because she's also going to be in like Halloween 2 after this, and then like, but in Halloween 3, she's a voice on the phone, like she's not actually in the movie, but she lends her voice for stuff.
Little cameos. Yeah, it's a fun little Easter egg for people.
Yeah.
Well, behind the scenes, Carpenter, this time around, he added a few new faces into the mix. Dean Cundy is back, that son of a bitch, and we'll get to his work on the film in a minute. But a few of the other, we've talked a lot about how Carpenter uses the same people over and over again, and some of those familiar faces are missing this time around.
I'm surprised you didn't say Big Dick Dean. I thought that was how you'd lead in with
we'll
Dean
talk
Cundy.
about, when we get into his actual work on the film, we'll talk about how big his dick is.
That son of a bitch.
But, most notably, I think, Carpenter's longtime production designer, Tommy Lee Wallace, had moved on to other projects, a path that would eventually lead him to, he becomes a director. He's going to direct the 1990 miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's It a few years later. And then later, a direct-to-video sequel to John Carpenter's Vampires. Did you know about this, Gary? It stars John Bon Jovi as a vampire hunter. But maybe that's a story for when we do vampires down the line. Or maybe we'll have to force ourselves to watch all the vampires sequels.
I mean, I could go off on a tangent here, too. No, I knew that there was a sequel to Vampires that had Bon Jovi in it. And the only reason I knew that is I remember seeing it when I worked in the video store. But, like, I did not know that it was, like, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace or anything.
Directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, yeah. How about that? And now, as you know, if you've been listening to these episodes, one of the many roles that Wallace played on Carpenter's other films was, he did a lot of stuff, but we talked about him. I think I called him the Swiss Army knife of John Carpenter's production at one point. But one of the main things he did was production designer. So finding someone capable to fill that role on Escape from New York was going to be crucial because, unlike Carpenter's previous films, which were all set in present day, Escape from New York would require the creation of a futuristic New York City as desolate wasteland. So this is a big role for a production designer. And the man that Carpenter would recruit to pull that off was a guy named Joe Alves. Now, Alves is kind of a legend in production design. His career began in 1979, oddly enough, with a movie starring Elvis Presley. Called Change of Habit. He's credited on that film as the assistant art director. But from there, he moved on to work for none other than John Carpenter's favorite director, Steven Spielberg. Being sarcastic there because John Carpenter famously fucking hates Steven Spielberg, and I don't really understand why, but he really likes to talk shit about Spielberg. But John Alves served as the art director on Spielberg's second feature, The Sugarland Express, before being promoted to production designer for both Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So, hell of a resume.
Yeah, this guy's something else. Directed Jaws 3D.
Yeah, well, that's probably not at the top of his, resume. Starring Dennis Quaid, Jaws 3D, starring Dennis Quaid. Yeah,
that's the one.
But one of the movies, wasn't Dennis Quaid married to somebody? Wasn't he on the set of one of the? Oh, he was married to one of the girls on Halloween, right? We talked about it in our Halloween episode, 2 episodes ago.
Oh, Dennis Quaid. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Alves still.
No, Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid, yeah, PJ Souls.
He was married to PJ. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was him or if it was her or what's her or Nancy Keys. Nancy Keys.
We were doing the connection game here. This is great.
I know. This is. Well, anyway, one of Joe Alves' biggest challenges was going to be creating a decaying, semi-destroyed version of New York City. And right away, Alves rejected shooting on location in New York. Not only would it be far too expensive, but it would be nearly impossible to make it look like a destroyed city, especially on the budget that they're working with. Carpenter suggested shooting it on a backlot, but Alves nixed that idea right away, saying that the texture of a real street is not like a backlot. He knew that it would look, and I think that's true. I think a lot of times when a movie is shot on a backlot, you can kind of tell that it's on a backlot.
Right.
So they sent their location manager, Barry Bernardi. Remember Barry Bernardi?
Yeah. Barry.
And he's credited as a producer on this film as well, but he was the location manager. They sent him on an all-expenses-paid trip across the country looking for the worst city in America. That's an exact quote. That's what they told him. Go find the worst city in America. And he did it. He found the worst city in America. Congratulations, St. Louis, Missouri.
You win.
St. Louis was what he considered the worst city in America. Specifically, they chose East St. Louis, which is the half of the city that sits across the Mississippi from downtown St. Louis, because that area of the city was filled with old buildings that existed in New York at the time, but had this kind of seedy rundown quality that they were looking for.
I wonder how he pitched this. Is he hey, we're looking for a location that looks exactly like the ruined, lawless, post-apocalyptic hellscape of a maximum security prison. Can we use your town And the city's just, they're like, oh, yeah, for sure. Our city literally looks like actual hell. You want us to turn off the lights for you?
Yeah. We understand our role in this country. Like, we suck. Well, in 1976, East, which is what, like 5 years before this, right?
Right.
East St. Louis experienced a massive urban fire which destroyed entire neighborhoods. And even 5 years later, there was block after block of burnt-out rubble, giving the city the look of a desolate wasteland. Like, a lot of this stuff just had not been repaired. There are stories people tell where you can stand on certain areas, in certain areas of East St. Louis, and you could just see for blocks and blocks because it was just leveled from this massive fire that had taken place.
St. Louis has this quality about it that, like, when I was with the wrestling thing, we did a few of our pay-per-views in St. Louis at the Chase, and it was in downtown St. Louis. But I remember traveling there, and I drove every time I went to St. Louis from here in South Carolina, which is several hours. But I remember leaving one night, and we had to go to like Nashville the next day. So I was trying to. Anyway, long story short, I had put my GPS on like the walking path versus like the driving path for some reason, and I didn't realize it at first. And so somehow in St. Louis, and it was still this way as of a few years ago, like you could be in a perfectly fine downtown, and then 2 minutes later, somehow you are in, I don't know, where you think you're going to die, I guess is what I'm trying to say. it's that was happening to me. Like, I kept driving back into the city, and then my GPS would just take me back out into, somebody's going to kill you here.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait, what is going on? Why is this happening?
That was East St. Louis, maybe.
Yeah, it probably was East St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we are, of course, going to give Big Dick Dean Cundy his due for creating another masterpiece on this film. But
hell yeah, Dean.
Before we do that, I do want to make sure that it's clear just how much of the visual look of this film was due to the incredible work of Joe Alves. This is a guy that is committed to his craft. Case in point, he refused to use a cheap miniature model for the scene where Air Force One crashes into Manhattan, or rather where they find the crashed Air Force One in the middle of Manhattan. So he goes to a commercial aircraft boneyard in Arizona and purchased a real decommissioned Douglas DC-8 passenger airliner. He had his crew chop it into 3 sections, load it onto flatbed trailers, drive it from Arizona to St. Louis, and then and to avoid the bureaucratic red tape that would be involved, they apparently skipped a lot of the paperwork that would be needed to haul a full-size airplane into the middle of the city. They quietly unloaded these giant pieces of fuselage into the street, into this intersection where they were going to film under the cover of night. So people were waking up the next morning, and there's a fucking airplane in the street.
Yeah. According to the commentary, like, local residents were like calling into the city reporting that there had been a plane crash. And I mean, that's from like Carpenter talking about it, but it's just like, what? Did you think you slept through it? Like, what?
Right? Wouldn't you hear it?
Yeah, like a plane just landed out in the street. Feels like you would know.
Yeah, I think you would notice that. For the 69th Street Bridge, which is the mine-covered bridge that's featured heavily in the film's climax, Alves actually convinced the city of St. Louis to sell him this bridge. It was called the Old Chain of Rocks Bridge, which is a great name. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I want to look into where that name came from, because the Old Chain of Rocks Bridge is great. But this is a bridge that crosses the Mississippi River. So by owning the bridge, all liability would fall on the production, not on the city. That's why they purchased it. So they purchased it for $1 from the city, and then sold it back to the city for the same amount once filming was completed 3 months later.
They're also battling cicadas, apparently. That's what Kurt Russell and John Carpenter.
It was a cicada year, huh?
Yeah, they were saying there was like constant like swarms of cicadas like attacking them, but it was just loud and just terrible. But
are cicadas in like all parts of the country, or is it like a southern thing or an East Coast thing? Do people know?
You'll find out when you tune into our new show, Biology Shock.
Cicada Shock.
Cicada Shock.
It's right there.
I know. How'd I miss that? So disappointed in myself.
I know.
We could double our listenership if I would just get on the ball.
All right, so to maintain the film's dark post-apocalyptic atmosphere, the shoot took place almost entirely at night, shooting from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. Somehow, like you mentioned this, but somehow the production persuaded the city of St. Louis to shut off the electricity to 10 blocks at a time each night, which, of course, just allowed Dean Cundey to work his magic.
That son of a bitch. I was listening to John Carpenter talk about this, and I just picture the psychological toll that this has to take on you. He was talking about how he would go to sleep at like 7 a.m. just as the sun was coming up, and then you wake up around 5 p.m. to start looking at dailies and then start all over again. So for like 2.5 months, he said he felt like he was just like, I did not experience daytime. So I just imagine living in like 106 degree heat with 95% humidity. Like you're just like a sweaty mole man at this point. What are you doing?
Cundey and Carpenter were aiming for a very specific look for the inside of the Manhattan prison, with very few electric lights, because electricity was a scarcity within the walls. It's a major plot point. In order to shoot on location in St. Louis at night without washing out the frames with artificial studio lighting, Cundey turned to his old pals at Panavision, who developed a new ultra-fast anamorphic high-speed lens, which allowed Cundey to capture sharp, clear exposures using almost nothing but ambient moonlight, street lights, and the natural glow of fires burning in trash cans.
Yeah, I wish I could say I completely understand this, but I'm not a camera guy. They were talking about in the commentary, like they were using I think he called them like quote fast lenses, and how they could shoot it at like an f-stop of like 1.8 or 2.2, which was amazing and something you could never do before. But it was also very tricky because he was saying like the struggle with Panavision anamorphic was that the focus, you lose it real quick. So I think we discussed that a little bit on the fog too, but I'm wondering if that relates back to that blurry Lee Van Cleef stuff I mentioned before. But they were talking about how they had to like stay on it with like the focus and everything.
Yeah, it may have, because I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of what f-stop is and all that, but f-stop is basically a measurement of the lens aperture that opens and closes. So obviously if it's closed, less light gets in. If it's open, more light gets in. But it also, the F stands for focal length, because it's controlling how much can be in focus at one time. So when you have like a shorter focal length, you're going to get like somebody in focus in the foreground, but the background might be completely blurred. And the amount that you can keep in focus is based on that f-stop. But you also have to account for the amount of light that can get into the actual lens, because the light goes into the lens, hits the film, and exposes the film. That's how you get your picture. So it's kind of a balancing act here. So he's using some sort of new lens that allows them to shoot, because the lens also controls the way that the light, is being brought into the aperture, etc. So I don't know much about these lenses that he's using other than what he has talked about in interviews about it. But apparently something with the way these lenses were manufactured allowed them to basically, I guess the lens must have been allowing more light in than an anamorphic lens usually does, because we talked about this in, I think, Halloween or maybe The Fog. Anamorphic lenses require a lot more light than a standard spherical lens does. So this was kind of an innovative addition to this.
Yeah, so you can find out more about that on our new show, Camera Shock.
We're starting a whole network here.
Right.
Well, the flickering firelight that's all throughout the film presented its own challenge. Because it was the primary source of light for the inmates, Cundey wanted the illumination across the movie to have an organic movement, as if there was always a fire burning nearby. Now, in the past, this meant that a lighting tech would have to manually work a dimmer board by hand, like flickering it, to make it look like there's fire off screen, which always produced inconsistent results.
Dale, does that look like a fucking firelight to you? Have you been near a fire, Dale?
Fucking Dale. So Cundey wanted a new solution, so he consulted an electronic expert that he knew and kind of told him exactly what he was looking for. And they ended up building this custom prototype that he called the Flicker Box. It would this electronic box that would automatically modulate the brightness, speed, pulse, and duration of electric light to mimic a dancing campfire or a broken neon sign. Now, this sounds like something that should have already existed by 1980, 1981, but it didn't. And nobody had done this before. They were still just doing this kind of the old-fashioned way. And Cundy's invention was so successful that it was copied and is now used industry-wide. So,
You did it again, Dean!
you son of a bitch, you innovative son of a bitch.
Big Dick Dean Cundy, ladies and gentlemen. That son of a bitch rolls up in the movie van and changes movie history every time he lights a scene. Yeah. My actual favorite Dean Cundy story from this movie, though, is in that On Set with John Carpenter movie. He tells the story about the prank they played on Ray Stella. That I guess Ray Stella was just the guy that they just pick on Ray Stella.
He sounds like he's pretty gullible, to be honest.
They said they had like an actress on set that they convinced to like cozy up to Ray Stella and become like kind of interested in him. And then he didn't know who she was or where she was, but she had the last name Scarletti. And so then later on, they tell this story with Ray Stella around about how they got a message from some gangster in St. Louis named Scarletti, who says somebody on set is like fucking his wife or something. And he's going to find out who it is and kill him. And so,
wow.
And like Ray Stella is getting freaked out by like, I'm not to do anything. And, like they said they even like in St. Louis around some of the places they were filming, they like made fake graffiti about like Scarletta's gonna kill you and stuff like that. and then they had like a guy another actor show up on set who said he was a representative of Scarletti.
Wow,
and he was looking for Ray.
This is an intricate prank.
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up. He said they finally had to like come clean with him because he was freaking out. But
well, one of my favorite stories from this entire production revolves around the brutal gladiatorial wrestling match that Snake is forced into late in the film. The giant inmate he's forced to fight was played by a 6'3", 350-pound professional wrestler named Ox Baker, who was known for an incredibly aggressive fighting style and a big old bushy mustache. It's an impressive mustache.
Yeah.
But
it is.
His famous catchphrase, well, this is not like the best catchphrase, but it is to the point. His catchphrase was, "I love to hurt people." So, not fancy, but to the point, and a fact that Kurt Russell would soon learn was true.
Yeah, not the catchiest catchphrase, but good for wrestling. It's kind of the job. So like it works well. There's not many other jobs you can put that on your resume and it's going to go well. So
yeah.
But just for context, not to step all over this, but Ox Baker clearly looks like a badass, and he's also he's a professional wrestler in the late 70s, early 80s when the industry was still very protected. So when I say that, I mean like people will say, wrestling is, to be polite, I'll say scripted is the word. But around this time, they're still like trying to protect the business, like to make people.
They're trying to protect the illusion of pro wrestling, as if it's just two guys actually getting in the ring and hurting each other.
Exactly, and so what they call kayfabe.
Yeah.
So there's already going to be some, I don't know if I want to say ego, but like pride in making sure you come across as a legit tough guy in this situation. So one of the top things that Ox Baker is known for is that he had this finishing move called the heart punch. Mm-hmm. And now it was also known as the hurt punch, to go with that great catchphrase. But the thing about it was literally a move where he finishes you, but like he bends your arm over your head and he just literally just punches you straight in the chest.
Jesus Christ.
So it's the heart punch. It's what it sounds like. So in 1971, Ox and his tag team partner, The Claw, great tag team.
The Claw.
Yeah.
Wait, that was his partner?
That was his partner, apparently.
They were just called The Claw.
Well, I mean, yeah. According to what I was reading, it was like him and his partner, The Claw, are taking on the tag team of Alberto Torres and Cowboy Bob Ellis. Now, the match happens. Everything's normal, except that Ox Baker, I guess, hits the heart punch at one point on Alberto Torres. After the match, at some point, Alberto Torres died.
Wow.
Not storyline. He died. So,
Wow.
yeah. I'll let that sink in for a minute. Now, I'll tell you that he actually died apparently as the result of heart disease, and it was just weird timing. So,
Yeah.
But pro wrestling being what pro wrestling is, this was worked into an angle where Baker was blamed for killing Alberto Torres with the heart punch.
Wow.
Not sure that you can get away with that these days, but
I don't
here
know.
we are.
Maybe in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, maybe. This is happening. This is pro wrestling. So
Wow.
fast forward 3 months. Ox Baker is taking on Ray Gunkel, a 3-time NWA Texas Heavyweight Champion. So after the match ends, Ray Gunkel dies.
He killed another guy? He killed 2 guys?
So we'll let that sink in for a little bit. But yeah, Ray Gunkel died. And apparently that one was actually attributed to a blood clot that led to a heart attack or maybe heart disease. Not 100% sure which one. But again, it's wrestling being wrestling, and they ran with it, and Ox Baker has now murdered another person in the ring with the heart punch.
Wow.
So this all leads up to him eventually getting into a match in 1974 in Cleveland, Ohio, against the Big Cat Ernie Ladd, one of my favorite old school wrestlers. And they wanted some heat for this match, so the way they got it was everybody knew who Ox Baker was, and like I said, wrestling was way more protected than and so people were buying a lot of this, and so you can imagine they were very upset when, in the middle of the match, Ox Baker starts hitting the heart punch on Ernie Ladd and would not stop, just repeatedly hitting it with the heart punch. And this caused, I shit you not, a riot in that arena. They had to get the cops involved and everything.
Wow. A riot?
Yeah.
Jesus.
People tried to stop Ox Baker from murdering Ernie Ladd. So, anyway, I didn't mean to derail completely, but I just thought it might be nice to have some context for who we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and to tell you about our next show, Wrestling Shock.
Right.
I mean, I looked into Ox Baker a little bit. I didn't go as deep as you did because I was just like, I wanted to see if he had worked with like major people that I was familiar with, and he did. I mean, he worked with like he had matches with Carlos Colon. He had matches with the Sheik, I think he was a tag team partner with Ole Anderson at one point. Superstar Billy Graham, Macho Man Randy Savage. He feuded with for a little while.
Macho Man wasn't going to put up with that shit. He ain't taking a heart punch.
No.
No, we don't get near the ticker. No, sir.
Well, the point is that Ox Baker's a big bad man, right?
Yeah.
And they're putting him in a ring with Kurt Russell, who is, an actor.
You're right.
Right. So during rehearsals, though, when they were rehearsing this fight scene, Baker was paired with Kurt Russell's stunt double, the incredibly named Dick Warlock.
I'm something of a Dick Warlock myself.
Bringing it back. We haven't had a Dick Smith joke in a while, but honestly, Dick Warlock is even better. Right. It's like you become a Dick Smith first, and then you graduate to being a Dick Warlock.
Yeah, you got to level up. It takes some grinding, but you'll get there.
That's like your Pokemon evolution.
Right. Man, I don't think I realized it, but Dick Warlock, I know the name from like other movies, but like he was
Halloween.
Yeah. He was Kurt Russell's stunt double for like 22 years.
I think he was actually contractually he was in Kurt Russell's contract for this movie and other movies where like if you signed on Kurt Russell, you were getting Dick Warlock.
Nice. I just love that phrasing. You did it tonight because now you get Dick Warlock.
What
Look
a
out,
name.
Ox.
Like when I'm listening to the commentary with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, and they're just casually referring to Dick Warlock as if that's not the most insane name that anyone's ever heard. Like,
maybe Kurt did back in the Disney days, like because he was with him like in the Disney days, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. And I will catch hate for this, and I don't care, but Dick Warlock actually is maybe my favorite Michael Myers. I really like him as Michael Myers. And
He plays Michael Myers in part 2?
yeah, in part 2.
Only part 2?
Yeah, I think he's only in part 2. And like, I don't think, like, Deborah Hill has famously said, like, she didn't think he got the walk down or something like that. But I like how he's more of a force of nature in, like, Halloween 2. Like, there's something, like, uneasy about him. Just his movements and mannerisms. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, and he got the job on Halloween 2 because of his work on this movie, because that's how he met John Carpenter.
Well, he was a stuntman, and what this is for a different show, I guess, but I guess what he did was Rick Rosenthal was in his office, and he was seeing he was going to do some stunts as Michael Myers, but then he saw the mask like in Deborah Hill's office or something, and like took the mask and put it on and went and stood in the doorway with the office Rick Rosenthal was in, and just stared at him for a while. And like Rick Rosenthal's like, what? I'm uncomfortable now. What's going on? And so then Dick Warlock says he took the mask off. Was like, is there any reason I can't just do this? And so he's like, no, I guess if you want to.
Somebody got to do it.
Yeah. So anyway, in rehearsals, he was getting his ass beat.
Yeah, I mean, during these rehearsals, Dick Warlock and Ox Baker are in the ring. Baker goes full contact. He's not pulling punches. He's legitimately pummeling Dick so bad.
Oh, how are we going to do this?
He was legitimately beating Dick so badly. The poor guy was black and blue by the end of the day.
Oh, my goodness.
Just poor bruised Dick.
Yeah, he's just like wailing on him. Dick, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you, Dick.
Oh, we're so immature.
So immature. But yeah, they literally said he got like, there was one punch that came in and he was supposed to duck, and he didn't duck in time, and Ox just full on laid into him, and he had this like huge welt on his head, and it was just so much black and blue that like Carpenter really couldn't use him anymore. So Kurt's gonna have to step up a little bit more in this. And when Russell said he was talking to Dick Warlock about some insight on how to approach this, he said Warlock, the only thing he said to him was, "Good luck." So Russell says he was like half crazed talking about Ox Baker. Carpenter says he was a real tough guy, but he was used to wrestling in full contact because, make no mistake, wrestlers will lay them in. But Ox wasn't used to Hollywood fighting.
Right.
And so talking about how tough he is, JC recalls one time that Baker was getting in the ring and he sliced his leg open on something, and it was on at ringside, and he had blood pouring out, and Carpenter stopped everything. It was just like, whoa, you want to have somebody take a look at that? Does it hurt? And he said Ox looked at him and just goes, "Does what hurt?" And so it's just like, okay.
All right, then, moving on.
So now they did say that in person, he was very sweet. It really was just that he struggled with how to take it easy. Russell says he even got with Warlock and said, let's try talking to him about this. And they along with Carpenter, discussed it with Ox Baker, and he seemed very understanding, but then they said as soon as it came time for action, he was at it again. They said he just wasn't coordinated like you'd want him to be for like their kind of choreographed
Well, he's
stuff.
not a stunt man. Yeah, he's not a stunt man. He's used to working with other wrestlers, and he probably gets in that ring and just gets in the zone. Like, this is what I do day in and day out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the whole scene is there because Carpenter talks about it in the commentary, how much he just loved professional wrestling anyway. And so, but I don't know. I feel like you hire a 350-pound mountain of man meat whose his catchphrase is, "I love to hurt people." You put him in the ring. Like, what if Steven Spielberg used a real shark for all of the big scenes in Jaws and acted shocked when it ate the boob guy? So,
I mean, his behavior, it was worrying the crew because he was genuinely hurting people on set. And then once filming began, Kurt Russell's in the ring with him. Baker went off script at one point and threw this is something you can do in wrestling, I guess, right? Because you improvise during wrestling, but he threw a heavy metal trash can directly at Kurt Russell's head.
Yeah, this is starting to be the peak of Kurt's tolerance for this, I think. They both said in the commentary that the sweat you see in like the scenes is like legit. Like Ox had Russell so worn out that he was like sweating the snake off of his stomach, and they kept having to like retouch up the stomach. But props to Kurt Russell, because he had a couple of options with how to handle this problem, and he used both, because there's like a Hollywood way to handle it and then the tough guy way. And he kind of combined them, honestly. Step one was apparently during one scene, he was fighting for his life with Ox, and finally, in between seats, Kurt walked up to Ox and punched him right in the dick. And, well, it sounds like it was more of like a sack tap, but still, as folks with testicles can attest to, they don't feel very good.
Yeah.
And according to Russell, like the bat stuff, I guess, was up next. So he had like the bat with him, and he said he told Ox, look, if you tag me, this is coming. Like, or he said that's coming, like talking about the sack tap, and holding up the bat and basically saying, and then this is coming.
Yeah.
And then I'm pulling you out of this movie.
Wow.
So, apparently, Ox gave him a nod as a, maybe a sign of respect. And well, as far as that stuff went, they were kind of getting through it. I don't know. Maybe all negotiations need to be that way. Like even at the UN, one country just sack taps another country.
This whole Iran thing would be done by then if
Right.
we were doing that. But
Yeah.
well, I mean, at the end of the scene, if you've seen the movie, hopefully you have, if you're listening to this, but Snake is supposed to hit Baker on the back of the neck with this baseball bat that you're talking about. But the bat is covered in nails, like spikes. And all that Baker had for protection was a tiny piece of padding on the back of his neck, which meant that if Russell missed by even an inch, he could seriously injure the wrestler.
Just to lay it out even more, I mean, the pad is made out of like a thick piece of wood hooked onto Baker's collar, because bat is legit and it has nails. And the idea is like Snake is nailing this guy, no pun intended, with the back of the head, and it's supposed to pierce into his skull and kill him.
Yeah.
But the only way they could actually make it stick was to make it, well, real. So he's hitting this bat into like this wooden pad on the back of his head there. So he's got to make it right.
So when the cameras rolled, Baker was visibly terrified, because I think he knew maybe that he'd been taking his heel persona too seriously, pushing the crew a little too far, pushing Russell way too far. And like you said, Russell had threatened him basically at this point, and now he's got the spiked bat in his hand. And the next thing we got to do is, I'm going to swing this at your head. This is what we're supposed to do. And so now Baker's safety is entirely in Russell's hands. So Russell kind of deliberately took his time, stared Baker down, and then swung the bat. And then, of course, he nailed the protective pad on Baker's neck with perfect precision. I guess all those years of playing baseball had come in handy for this scene.
Ox Baker shit his pants. Not really, but.
But Russell did admit later on that filming this sequence with Ox Baker was one of the worst days that he had ever spent on a movie set. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up this episode this week on Cinema Shock. On the next episode, the production moves out of the grimy streets of St. Louis, heads to the sound stages of Hollywood to figure out how to create a ruined Manhattan skyline on a minuscule budget. That's where a rogue visual effects team enters the picture, including a brilliant 26-year-old artist whose work on this miniature Manhattan would launch one of the most powerful directorial careers in Hollywood history. If you don't know who we're talking about, you'll have to tune in next time.
Wow, that's a hell of a tease. Who are you talking about? Is it Tom Selleck? Is it Rob Schneider? Is it Donnie Wahlberg? Or Diddy?
You're naming all of the worst people.
Well, I was gonna say I don't know about all. Like if Tom Selleck or Donnie Wahlberg ever listen to this, they'll be like, why are we grouping?
Why are you grouping me with Rob Schneider and Diddy? Oh, all right. Well, you'll have to tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, and all that stuff. Why are we making so many bat references?
I was about to say, wow, that is a callback. Okay, to Cesar Romero, everybody.
It is Cesar Romero. Well, anyway, that's all we got for this week. Thank you again for joining Cinema Shock Plus. If you're listening to this, well, if you're hearing this, you're not in Cinema Shock Plus, because if you were in Cinema Shock Plus, you would already have this full story laid out for you. You wouldn't have to wait another week to hear the end of the tale of Escape from New York. But if you want to join Cinema Shock Plus, head to Cinema Shock Plus, cinemashock.net/plus. That's the website. And you can join. You can hear the whole story. You can get all the bonus stuff that we're going to be throwing into these episodes. And that's all I got for this week, Gary. What else do you have? Anything you want to tell our listeners?
I love you all. Thank you for being here
Thank
today.
you for being here and listening.
And listening to our TED Talk.
If you do enjoy this, if you enjoy what we're doing with this John Carpenter series or with this episode, with this movie, share this with any of your friends who are into these types of movies and want to hear all the nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes stories, because we're digging deep on these John Carpenter ones, man. This is fun. We really are trying to be the ultimate resource for behind the scenes on these movies, and we're doing I gotta say, we're doing a pretty damn good job, Gary.
I feel good about it. I feel like we are both putting in a lot of effort for this. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it and learning something, and recommend it to all your friends.
Recommend it to your friends. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit all that stuff. Rate, review. You know, all the stuff that people say at the end of podcasts. You hear it all the time, but it matters. It is important, because that's rating and reviewing this on Spotify or Apple is really what helps get it in front of other people. But also just like DMing it to your buddy. Sending a text to your buddy, letting them know, hey, listen to this podcast I just heard. That's as good as anything. That's word of mouth. That's how we get out there. We don't have a big marketing budget here at Cinema Shock. Our team consists of 2 people, and it's me and Gary. We're the team. We're the whole team. So any help we can get from you guys is very much appreciated. So thank you for listening. And I guess until next week. Oh, well, where can you be found on the internet, Gary, before I sign off?
I am at This Is Gary Horne on all of the stuff.
And I am at Justin_Bishop. The show is at Cinema_Shock on all the social media. Follow us there, and head to cinemashock.net for resources for all things Cinema Shock, including access to our merchandise, our Discord, Cinema Shock Plus, all that stuff. And until next time,
may the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.